Alright, in this tutorial we are going to learn how to make business cards. Obviously anybody who is in business for themselves will benefit from having a business card, but more importantly from a graphic design perspective, this tutorial will teach us how to do a lot of important things inside of Photoshop. One of the things that we'll learn is the difference between vector and raster images. We'll learn how to use some of the hidden items inside of Photoshop, as well as some basic shapes like rectangles and circles. And I'll try to add in some pro tips to help you do this even faster. Now we're going to design a front and a back to this business card. So if you are interested in learning how to create business cards like this in Photoshop, stick around and we'll get started right now. Alright, so let's go ahead and create a new file. We're going to open up Photoshop and click the New File button. And for this one, we're actually going to start with a print doc, but we're going to go ahead and change the settings. So I'm going to start with letter 8.5 by 11, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the right where it says width, and I'm going to change that to 7. Make sure that your units of measurement is set to inches, and then we're going to change the height to 4 inches. Now, technically speaking, this is twice as big as business card needs to be. Most business cards are 3.5 by 2. I find that working at a larger size just makes it a little bit easier, and you can always shrink things down inside of Photoshop and retain quality. What you don't want to do is stretch things beyond their initial size, because that will almost always lead to a loss of quality when working with raster images. And if you don't know what a raster is, we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So if we come down here, we see that the resolution is defaulting to 300. Now this is unique to print items. If we were designing something for the web or for video, we would only want a resolution of 72 pixels per inch. 300 basically means that there's 4 times as much data in every inch, every square inch of this card. And the reason for that is because generally when you're working in print, the idea is that you're going to have it closer to your face and you're going to see it more detailed than you would if you were watching it on a television screen or a computer screen. So for that reason, we are going to go with a resolution of 300. As far as our color mode, we do have some options here. Generally speaking, when you're working in print, they prefer a CMYK color mode. RGB is the standard for video and internet and most digital things. But when you're going to print, most printers will prefer cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and switch this to CMYK. The background can be white. We'll leave the rest of this as it is. So let's go ahead and hit create. Okay, so we have a document now that is 7 inches wide by 4 inches tall. And what we're going to do first is we're going to lay out some rulers. We're basically going to divide this into thirds. So if we look at the height, now as I'm looking at my rulers, I can see that they are set to pixels rather than being set to inches. And for me, that's helpful. Rather than having to subdivide 1/16 of an inch and 32nds of an inch, I can see if I look over here in the upper left of my document. In fact, let's zoom in just a little bit. In fact, we'll go to View, Fit to Screen. There we go. So now if we look in the upper left, you can see it says 0 right up in this corner. And if we come down to the bottom, you can see it says 1200. Okay, that's much easier to divide by 3 than 4 inches would be. So 1200 basically means we need to have a guide set every 400 pixels. I'm going to make this just a little bit wider here. There we go. So we'll set a guide every 400 pixels, and then for the top it looks like we have 2100 pixels of width. So for that it will be every 700 pixels. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now, if you're not seeing this ruler, and there's definitely a possibility that you are not, then you want to go over to View, and you'll see where it says Rulers. Just put a check mark next to it. And once you create rulers, you can then easily pull out what we call guides. And to do that, you just need to put your mouse in the ruler, click, and hold the mouse down. And you can see that now I'm pulling out this guide. And this guide won't render, it won't show up on my final work. This is just something to help me inside of Photoshop. And if I come over here, I want to get the first one at 400 pixels. Now you can see right where my mouse is in the center, it's actually giving me a count. If I hold Shift, it will constrain to units of 10. So obviously holding Shift is going to make it really easy to land right on 400. I'll go ahead and let go, and then I'll click again in the rulers, and I will drag out a guide. And again, I'm now going to hold down Shift and just look until that says 800. There we go. All right, so now we have those guides. And to be quite honest, we actually won't be using this one right here, but we will be dividing the width into thirds. So 2100 is our total, so every 700 pixels, we're going to drop a guide. So I'll click on the left side now, and I'll drag this out. I'm going to hold down Shift until I see the number 700 pop up, and then I'll let go. And I'll do the same thing again. Again, I'm clicking and holding, and now I want to get to 1400. So again, as soon as I get near it, then I hold Shift, and that sticks me to, let me make sure I got that there, constrains me to units of 10. Okay, so now we have our page divided into thirds, and like I said, we really don't need that middle guide, because if you saw the image at the beginning, you know that this is all going to be our main image up here. Okay, so, in fact, let's hop back to that first image, just so you can see where we're going here. So you can see now that we've got this top dedicated, the top 2/3 is sort of the hero image, as we call it, and the lower third is all going to be these solid color blocks. Now, before we get into building these color blocks, I want to talk a little bit about color theory. And really all this refers to is the relationship between colors. Are they similar or are they dissimilar? So let's just take a second and look at a couple examples here so we can understand the basics. I just want to talk about 3 different types of color relations. And in order to understand these, we need to look at a color wheel. And we'll talk about our first color type. This one right here. Again, this is a color wheel. If you've never looked at one of these, it just shows the relationships of colors. So the first relationship of colors I want to talk about is called complementary. Let's look at orange and blue violet right here. This is a very, very common color type. In fact, if you look right up here in the corner, you see there's blue and orange. Basically what it means to be a complementary color is just simply that you are across from that color on the color wheel. Colors that are next to each other are similar, and colors that are across from each other are what we call complementary. But the reality is they're technically opposites. And what opposite colors do is they give you the most amount of contrast, which tends to make your images really pop. So the first term we're going to talk about is complementary. And again, all it means is that the colors are directly across from each other on the color wheel. And if we look at an example of a complementary image, something like this right here of these oranges, or this single orange, you can tell that the orange and blue really create maximum contrast in the same way that yellow and purple create contrast. Red and green is another great one, teal and orange. So those are complementary colors. And again, if you want something to pop, pick colors that are opposites of each other, like teal and orange. Now the other type of color we want to talk about are similar colors, and those are referred to as being analogous colors. So if we look at analogous colors, those are colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So for example, yellow, red, and orange are all analogous colors. Green, blue-green, and blue are all similar. And what analogous colors do is they give you sort of almost a calming effect. It's like the least amount of contrast. So if we look at analogous colors examples, you see that they're very similar. They're not sort of competing with each other to pop off the page. If anything, they're sort of working together to create a similarness. So that is an analogous color. And again, I think of like the 70s. Analogous colors were really popular. Browns and yellows and oranges, things like that were not uncommon. And then the third is a mixture of the two. And these are called split complementary. And all split complementary means is that you are picking, basically, instead of just getting a complementary color, like if I took yellow and violet, that would be complementary because they're directly across from each other. But split complementary basically means you're using three colors, and one of them is across the color wheel, and then you go across to the opposite one, but you pick the two next to it. Okay, so you have two similar colors and one dissimilar color. And that creates, again, sort of a similarity and then a contrasting color like the yellow here. If you look at these examples on the side, we have blue-green and yellow-green. These are similar. And then we have red, which is right directly across. So that's split complementary. Now, what we're going to be doing today is sort of a combination of all of these, because what we're going to do, in order to pick the colors for our business card, we're going to pick one complementary color, and then we're going to pick three analogous colors. So it's kind of like split complementary, but we're going to add in that direct color that is directly across. So if we came over and looked at my business card from the past, you would see that we have red, or sort of a orange, red, orange, and yellow, which are all analogous. And then we have what is basically directly across from orange, this teal blue, and that is our complementary color. So I want you guys to pick out colors that fit this. We're going to use the analogous colors on the bottom and the complementary color on the top. All right, so at this point, it's a good time to start dragging out these boxes. The boxes are created using this tool right here. It's called the rectangle tool. And the rectangle tool, along with the text tools inside of Photoshop, create what we call vectors. Now, what is the difference between a vector and a raster image? The easy answer is scalability. If I drag out a rectangle and I give it a fill of green, okay, this is something that was created inside of Photoshop. This is created using an algorithm. So rather than being dependent upon pixels like a photograph, you can only stretch a photograph so far before it starts to look bad, before those pixels start to grow and all of a sudden you can see the resolution getting lowered. Whereas with a vector item, if I choose to change the shape or expand it, there's no loss of quality. So if you think about text or shapes that you create inside of Photoshop, you can stretch them as much as you want without any loss of quality. Now, can I say the same for a photograph? Of course not, right? With photographs, at some point, you're going to lose quality. If I were to even just grab one of these examples right here. So if I take this image and I just keep stretching it, at some point, you're going to start to see it fall apart. And it's a little tricky to stretch it here. Let's see if I can, there we go. Grab that corner and just keep stretching. And what you can tell is that if we zoom in a little bit, we're starting to see this stair-stepping, because this, while this is text, this is from a photograph that I screen captured. So I didn't create this text inside of Photoshop. And as I stretch it out, you can see that it's starting to lose quality. And if I were to continue to do that, you would see that at some point you're actually going to be able to see the pixels themselves right there. Zoom out a little bit. So you can see this little grid of pixels. The point is just simply that this is a raster image. And because it's a raster image, I can't stretch it indefinitely. Okay, so now that we know the difference between vector and raster, let's go ahead and grab our rectangle tool, and we're going to go ahead and drag out a rectangle. And I'm going to zoom in here. So I'm going to hit Command plus, that's going to be Control plus on a PC. And then I'm going to hit the space bar, and that just allows me to move my document over a little bit. I'm not actually moving anything inside the document, just using the hand tool to kind of allow me to see this corner right here. And the reason I do that is because it is really easy to miss these guides. What I mean by that is to drag out a rectangle that doesn't quite hit the ends. And so anytime that I have guides in place that I want to make sure that my shape lines up with, I like to zoom in. It's just, you just do better work when you zoom in. You're more attentive to details. So I'm going to put my mouse right over this intersection right here on the lower third, and I'm going to click and drag diagonally in this direction. And then I'll go ahead and let go. So you'll notice a couple things. We now have this rectangle, and as long as it is selected, I have 3 different places where I can change its color and stroke. If I go up to the very top, slide this over just a touch. If I go up to the very top, you will see fill and stroke. If I look at my, what's this thing called? Contextual taskbar, you will see fill and stroke. If I come over to the right where it says appearance, as long as this layer is selected, you will see fill and stroke. In any of these, I can change these colors. And so let's go ahead and do it over here on the right where it says appearance. And so all I have to do is click in this fill box right here, and I will get access to any swatches that I may have saved, or just any colors I may have used recently. I'll get access to all of these different swatches right here. Each one of these is full of colors, and I could select any of these and it would automatically apply it to that rectangle. Or if I want to create a color using the color mixer, I could just come over here to this little icon on the right hand side and click that, and that would allow me to come over and pick the colors this way. Now the benefit of this is if I'm doing analogous colors and I want to pick orange, yellow, and maybe light green, it makes it very easy to see where those are. Essentially, this bar right here is a stretched out color wheel. If you look at, notice we have red at the bottom and we also have red at the very top. So imagine that reaching around and creating a wheel. So I'll go ahead and color the first one, sort of this, let's go orange. And notice that we have this little control right here. I'm going to stick that right up in the upper corner and click OK. And that's going to change it to orange. Now here is something that I would recommend you doing to save time. Rather than dragging out multiple rectangles, you could just copy and paste this one in 2 different spots. And that might be the easiest way to go. What I'm going to do here is rather than copying and pasting, I'm going to make sure that my rectangle is selected, and I'm going to hit Command J. And you can see that that duplicates the layer. So now I have a duplicate of that rectangle right on top of itself. And if I switch to the Move tool, I could click and drag it over. But since I just want to go straight to the right, it's almost easier to just hold Shift and use the right arrow key. And the reason I like doing that is because it makes sure that I'm not going to accidentally go up a little bit or down a little bit. Makes it very easy to get right on there. And of course, like always, Command plus to zoom in. I want to make sure that I didn't accidentally leave a pixel of space in between there. So now we have 2 rectangles, and I'll go ahead and select that one and hit Command J to duplicate it. And once again, just hold down the Shift key and use the arrow key to nudge it over. The Shift key just makes it jump in increments of 10 pixels, which speeds up the process. There we go. So they're all the same color, but I can select each one of them. I can click on the layer, and I can go over to Appearance and change that color. So again, I'm going to hop back over to the color mixer. I was right there. I'm going to move this one just to a little bit lighter orange. Make sure that I nudge the color up into the upper right-hand corner. That's the most saturated version of this orange. If I move it this way, it's adding white. If I move it this way, it's adding black. And if I kind of move it towards the middle, it's actually adding gray, which is just desaturating the color. So we'll click OK. And notice that now that one is a lighter shade of orange. I'll go to the next one. And again, make sure that I select the layer on the Layers panel. And click on it to select it. And go to Fill. And once again, back to my color picker. And I'm going to go just a little bit further up into sort of a yellow. And make sure I'm in the upper corner. And click OK. And there you go. Very easy way to get colors and shapes on your screen quickly. And we need one more for the top. So let's go ahead and grab that. We'll use the rectangle tool. We will click and drag out. And the nice thing about the rectangle tool is even if you have a different layer selected, it's automatically going to create its own layer. And some of you might be looking at this tool thinking, what's that little circle in the corner? That little circle is a tool that allows you to round off the corners. So if I grab that circle and drag, you can see that it's giving me a rounded corner. We don't actually want that for this assignment, but now you know what it does. All right, so for this, I want to go for an opposite color, and I'm going to go for something that is the opposite of orange. So again, make sure that it's selected, and I think I'm just going to go with a light blue. And now that I zoom in, actually just looking at it, I can see, look at right here. If I look at this guide, I can see that my yellow rectangle is hanging over just a little bit. And what actually kind of alerted me to that was I looked over here and I saw this white edge right there. So this is part of being a graphic designer. You have to look at the details. You have to zoom in. You have to make sure that you're not leaving little accidental gaps. So to fix that, I'll just select the rectangle and just hit the right arrow. How many times? One time. I actually need to go up and select the Move tool. If you don't have the Move tool selected, the arrow keys won't move your item. You can also hit the V key to get the Move tool. So there you go. 2 taps of the arrow. I think I'm looking good. Let's come over here. Is there a gap in there? It's hard to tell because the guide is in the way. I'm going to scoot the guide out of the way. That looks pretty good. So if we are in good shape, then we can move on to the next part. And what I want to do now is I'm going to subdivide each one of these. So if we have 700 pixels, is between 0 and 700, I'm going to put a guide at 350. So let's go ahead and do that right now. I'm going to put my mouse over in the left ruler. I'm going to drag out a guide, and when I start getting close to 350, I'm going to hold down the Shift key. And that puts me right there, 350, right in the middle. So now for this one, I'm at 700, so I need to add 350 onto that, so it'll be 1050. So I'll do the same thing, click, drag, and when I get near 1050, hold down the Shift key, and there we go. And then finally, I need to add another 350 onto 1400, so that will be 1750. One last guide, and again 1750, hold down Shift, and there we go. So why did we just do that? Well, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add circles right here. And basically this little X we have now is going to be the dead center of our circle. So it's going to make it easier to know that we are in the center of our document, or at least of this third right here. So let's go ahead and go back to the rectangle tool, but this time I'm going to click and hold the mouse down, and I'm going to come down to the ellipse tool. That's the tool we use for making circles. Okay, so I've got the ellipse tool selected, but before I start to create anything new, I want to make sure that I don't have any layers selected. So I'm just going to come over and click at the very bottom underneath the background. If I had this rectangle right here selected and I started working on a new one, it would actually affect that. So anyways, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put my mouse right in the middle of this X. So what I need to do is I need to click and drag just a little bit and then hold down Option and then hold down Shift. You'll notice that if I undo that, if I hold down just Option, I get the eyedropper. And if I hold down Shift, it doesn't change. So with the ellipse tool selected, put your mouse right on that X, drag just a little bit, and then hold down Option and Shift. And you'll see that it now makes the circle from the center. And I'm going to make this circle about 230 pixels. So I'm looking at the little height and width indicator just to the right of my mouse, and I can see it says 230, and I will let go. Now, the cool thing is we only have to do this once because we can just copy and paste this one just like we did before. So the first thing you'll notice is that it is defaulting to the color of the top, which we don't want. So what we want to do is we want to select the fill color. Now notice that the ellipse is selected, so make sure yours is selected too. What I want to do is select the fill color, and then I'm going to come over and grab the eyedropper, which is this little, looks just like an eyedropper, and I'm going to click on the orange. And you can see that that fills the ellipse with that color. It samples the orange and fills the ellipse because the ellipse was selected when I did it. Now let's go ahead and go back to the Move tool, and let's keep the ellipse selected, and we'll hit Command J because that duplicates it. And just like before, as long as you have the Move tool selected, you can just use the Shift key and slide that guy over. And all I'm going to do is just try to line up those control points, the blue dots, with my guide, and that looks pretty good. Since we're here, we might as well do that again. We'll hit Command J, Shift, and slide it over. And there we go. Again, I did all that holding Shift using the right arrow key. And now we need to make sure that these colors are accurate, so let's go ahead and select the one for the center. I'm just going to click on it. I'm going to go up to Fill, and then I'm going to come over. Actually, I don't even think I need to go to Fill, to be honest. I think I can just grab the eyedropper and click on that orange, and there we go. Same thing with the next one. I'm going to just select that layer and then click on the orange, and notice we're looking pretty good. And we're moving along quickly. That's the best part about this, is that it doesn't take a lot of time. And what we're going to do next is we are going to add in some custom shapes. And these are shapes that come stock inside of Photoshop. All right, so we're going to go over to the rectangle tool, and we're going to go down and choose the custom shape tool down at the very bottom. Again, just hold your mouse down on that rectangle or the ellipse tool as we're seeing right now, and go to the custom shape tool. And if you look up at the very top, you will see the shape that is loaded in at the moment, which is actually good because that's a shape we want to use. We're going to end up using a house, an envelope, and a telephone. We're going to actually go up to the window drop down at the very top, and we're going to choose shapes. And that opens up this window right here. And in this window, you can see we have lots of shapes to choose from. But you may need to enable some legacy shapes. So in the upper right hand corner, we're going to go up to the little hamburger right up there, those 4 lines. We're going to click on that, and we're going to go down to Legacy Shapes and More. If we click on that to allow those, we should have no problem finding all of the shapes we need. There's our legacy shapes right there now showing up. So let's go ahead and add these shapes in. First one I want is going to be a telephone. So if I go up to Legacy Shapes, where am I going to find a telephone? Well, let's take a look here for a second. You can see we've got all sorts of stuff. Feel like it's down towards the bottom, but I'll tell you one thing, they have added some shapes in here. All right, so right there is a telephone. I'm going to go ahead and select that shape. Now again, since we're creating these inside of Photoshop, these are also vector shapes. And what that means is that we can make these as big or as small as we want with no hit to the quality. We won't lose resolution by making them bigger. So again, I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm going to put my mouse right on that cross between the guides. I'm going to drag just a little bit, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and Option. And again, you can see how it makes it grow from the middle, which just saves me the time of having to center it later. So I'll figure, I don't know, 150 width looks pretty good. And you'll notice that it has a fill color, right? It's defaulting to whatever the last color I used was, but as long as it's selected, I can go right over here to where it says fill, click on that, and in this case, I'm just going to set it to white. I think that looks good. It kind of pops nicely. I could use blue. We could try that. Yeah, I feel like that gets a little lost, so I'll stick with the white. Okay, so we've got our phone, and that's where we'll have our phone contact. Now we'll go ahead and grab the envelope, and we have a choice here. We could either use the outline or the solid white one. I think I'll go with the solid white one. And again, click on it. Put your mouse over the little intersection right there. Drag just a little bit, and then hold down Option and Shift. And I believe for people on a PC, that's going to be Alt and Shift. And I think I did the last one at 150 or 148, so I'll do this one at the same size. Okay, now the final one I need to find is the house, and I think that one's in a different spot, so I'm going to go down a little further. If you feel you want to try different shapes, go ahead and feel free. That's not a problem at all. So where would I find a house? There's my house right there. The house is under Web. The other two, I believe, were just under Objects. So let's go down and select the house. And again, I'm going to put it right over that intersection. Click and drag just a little bit, and then hold down Option and Shift and stretch it out to about 148. There we go. As close as I can get. If I come over to fill, I can see it's set to white. That looks good. There we go. Just click on a different layer. Okay, so to add in my information, I'm going to use probably just a sans serif text, and I'm going to go ahead and drag out another guide just so I know where the middle of this line is. So I'm at 800 here, and it ends at 1200, so I'm going to put this guide right at 1000. And again, I will hold down Shift to help me get right there. Cool, so I'll probably put my text either across this line or on top of it. We'll see how it all pans out after everything is typed out. So we'll start with a phone number, and I'll grab the text tool, and notice how I don't have my character window open yet. That's because I haven't added any text, so I'm just going to click and add in what we call dummy text, and I'm going to do it on each one of these. Then I'll grab my Move tool, and I'll come in and slide that text over just a little bit. I might need to come down and select it first, and then slide it over. Okay, so to select text, you can put your text tool at the end of it and kind of, well, here's an example of what not to do. So again, sometimes highlighting text can be tricky. Sometimes you get text, and sometimes you actually end up dragging out an unwanted text box. So rather than doing that, what I prefer to do is just double click on the T for that text. So I know this bottom one is my first one, and if I double click on the T, you can see it selects all the text. You can definitely do it manually. If I click off, if you get your mouse in just the right spot, you can do that. But obviously, if you got to do this a bunch of times, it's just way quicker to just double click on that T and let it select all the text for you. All right, so I'm going to type in a phone number here. Not my actual phone number, but a phone number nonetheless. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of take a second, make sure I'm centered, and it looks like I am. I'm looking at this sort of side and that side, and they appear to be even, so I am happy with that. Now I will go back to my selection tool, and I'll drag, make sure I come over and click on the next layer. I accidentally created a layer in the process that I'm just going to drag down to the trash. There we go. So this next one right here is going to be my email contact. And we'll go ahead and just, again, drag it over to the center. And you can see these magenta guides that are popping up. These are called smart guides. And if I put it right there, it lets me know when I've got it centered on that line. So we'll go ahead and then double click on the T for that layer. And I'll type in. This is where we have to kind of make a decision. I haven't thought too hard about the size font. Right now this is 12-point font, which is fine. That's standard. But we're pretty much pushing the edges here. And I have to decide, do I want a bigger margin? Is that too small of a gap to leave at the edges? I generally don't like to go right up to the edges like that. So I believe for this one, I am going to shrink down the font just a little bit to 10 point. Now, if I want that change to happen, I have to make sure that the text is selected first. So I'll double click on the T and then drop it down to 10 point, just because I want to see how it looks. I feel like that looks a little better having a little bit of a margin on either side. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it like that. And then we'll come over here and type in an address. Same thing. Let's see, where did that one go? No, so this text is actually here. I just can't see it because it's defaulting to the same color as the yellow box. So double click on it and there it is. Might as well just go up to where it says color here and change that. I'm going to change all of these to white. There we go. And then I'll go over and grab the move tool and move this around until it is centered. I want that vertical. There we go. Notice there's a vertical one that pops up and then the horizontal. All right, triple click on it. And what do I want my address to be? How about, I don't know, 1450 Spooner Street. And we'll be in, how about Taos, New Mexico. All right. Taos. Did I spell that right? I don't think I did. There we go. All right. So again, this one, I think I'm just going to probably have half on top and half on bottom rather than splitting there. You definitely have the choice in this situation. It's always a little bit weird when none of them are the same. I might opt to shrink these down to 10 point as well, or who knows, maybe I'll change my mind and bump that one back up to 12 point. But either way, I'm going to go ahead and double click on the T. And again, this is a spot where I'm going to use the arrow keys because I just want it to go straight up, and I can just hit that up arrow key and get pretty good results pretty quickly. All right. So we got the text in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to the other ones and make sure that they are set to white. So I'll double click on the T for the email address, change it to white, and we'll do the same for the phone number. Just double clicking on the T to select it and then going up to appearance, or excuse me, the character window, and choosing the color. Okay, so the only thing that feels a little bit weird is just the size of the size of the address. I'm going to try shrinking that down to 10 point as well. And I think that looks pretty good. The next thing I want to do is add in my hero image. So the hero image is obviously the big image that is going to fill the screen. And so let's see what I've got here. I picked out a real estate photo and I'm just going to drag it in and let it go. So you can see it's coming in with what we call free transform controls. And that just means that I can stretch this out a little bit to fit in here. Now, when you're working at 300 pixels per inch, if you bring in a photograph that is 72 pixels per inch, and we're talking about resolution here, it's basically going to look about a quarter of its size. Let me explain that. So when you have a document set to 300 pixels per inch, it wants you to use photos that are 300 pixels per inch. If you don't, and you use a photo that's 150 pixels per inch, then it's going to be half as big as it normally is. If I use one that's 72 pixels per inch, meaning that if I just went onto the internet and I downloaded an image that was 7 inches by 4 inches, but it was only 72 pixels per inch, when I brought it into this document, it would be basically a quarter of that size. I know this is a little tricky to wrap your head around, but this image right here, when I shot it, was huge. It's being downsized because of the resolution of this document. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and stretch it just a little bit. You don't generally want to stretch photos, but you'll see that we're going to put a treatment on this that will keep it from looking bad. And it still looks pretty good right there. Even though I had to stretch it just a little bit, it still hasn't lost its resolution and it's not looking overly pixelated. So you can see I'm moving it up because I want to center the house and show a little bit of the water. So let's go over to our layers. You can see that right now a couple things are happening. First off, our free transform box is live. It's a couple different ways to make that go away. I can click the checkbox up here. I can hit the return key. I can hit escape. And those will all make this cease to have that free transform box around it. So I'll go ahead and hit the return key. And there you go. And now we have this on the top layer, but I'm going to go ahead and drag it down below all of my shapes because I don't want it covering all that up. So I'll just click on it and drag it and keep on dragging it until I am below pretty much everything. Let's take it all the way to the bottom. I'm going to leave it on top of my background layer, but in fact, the background layer is pretty much useless at this point. You can turn off the eyeball and you can see that nothing happens. Okay, so now we have this image on the bottom and our blue layer is covering it up. So we have some options. We could select the blue layer and we could go up to opacity and click on that and maybe drop the opacity to 50%. And that's okay. It's kind of just putting a weird blue color over the image. If that works for your image, you could do that, but I would almost never do that. And the reason is I just don't think it really adds anything to the image. If I want this image to be blue, there's a way better way to get the results I'm looking for. So I'll put the opacity back up to 100%. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here with the blue layer selected, and I'm going to go to where it says normal. These are blend modes. And if I open that up, you can see that if I just hover over these, each one of these affects the image in a different way. What it's doing is it is mixing the blue with the photo. And if I choose darken, it basically adds blue to all the darker areas of the photo. Essentially all of these are going to do a slightly different version of that. If I do, color burn's kind of cool, but it's not what I'm looking for. If I go to lighten, these are all going to add blue to the lighter areas of the image. And so again, I could just drag my mouse over these and see what they're doing. If I continue down and I go to overlay, you can see that that's mixing as well. But still, hard light's kind of interesting, but really not the look I'm going for. As far as difference, exclusion, and divide, these are kind of doing the opposites. These are going to give you pretty unusual results. These can be really fun under certain circumstances, but under this circumstance, I'm not looking for a photo negative of my photo. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come all the way down to where it says hue, saturation, and color. These are the ones that are going to give me the results I want. In fact, you can see that color looks pretty cool. That's the one I'm going to go with. So I'm going to click that and apply it. And now that I've done that and I can see the photo kind of in its context, I might come down here and select it and use the shift arrow keys to nudge it up and just sort of see if I like it up higher or maybe a little bit lower. There, looks pretty good. And then I have to decide, do I want to try to enlarge it, maybe push out this umbrella just a little bit. If I decided I wanted to do that, I could click on it and hit Command T, and then come up here and just drag that up a little bit, and then maybe recenter the image just a touch. I like it, so I'm going to continue. And while I generally don't like stretching images out inside of Photoshop because of the loss of quality, this is sort of a negligible amount. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hit return to get rid of my free transform controls. And at this point, I really just need to get my name on there and my company. If we go back to the original one and just take a quick look, what I've done here is I have used different weights to get kind of a stylized look. The font I used is called Helvetica, or Helvetica New. And I used Helvetica Bold on the top and Helvetica Ultra Light or Thin on the bottom. And I like that look. So on the left side, I'm going to put my name and my title. On the right-hand side, I'm going to put the company and what it does. Now, am I going to pull out guides again? Absolutely. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll grab a selection tool, come up here and click. We'll drag down a guide for the title and an additional guide for the subtitle. And I might absolutely choose to move these around a little bit, but that at least gives me a good starting point. So I'm going to go over to the text tool. I'm just going to click to put some dummy text on the screen, and then I'll drag it over using the move tool. And at that point, I will find that text, which is actually way down at the bottom, but that's okay. Well, it's actually not okay. It means it's going to put the text underneath that blue layer, and I don't want that. I want it to be white. I mean, you can see it's white right now, and that's because if you look at the photo, color blend mode doesn't affect full white. So I could leave it there, but just for the sake of organization, I'm going to drag it up to the top. And double click on the T and type in my name. All right, and then I'll double click on it again to select it all. And I will go to where it says font size. So I'm in the character window. It says 10 point. I'm going to make that a lot bigger. Let's try 18. I think I could go even bigger than that. 24. That looks pretty good. So if I want to use the arrow keys to slide this to the right, all I have to do is make sure that the text layer is selected and go up and grab the move tool. Normally I would hit the V key, but when you're working with text, you got to be careful of using key commands because you'll find that in a lot of situations you end up accidentally typing that letter. So I've got my name selected down here. I've got the move tool selected, and now I'm just going to use shift right arrow to slide that text over. And we'll just start right about there. That looks pretty good. And here's another thing I could do. Rather than reformatting this, since I know I want this text over here to look the same, I'm just going to duplicate this layer, the layer that has my name on it. I'm going to hit Command J, and you'll see that I can hit Shift, and there's the duplicate. I obviously clicked on it. It says Scott Taylor copy, but what I'm going to do is slide it over, double click on the T, and change the text to say next day. I'm going to go back to the move tool, and I am going to nudge it to the right. Now I want to try to get a similar margin over here that I have over here. So at this point, it's actually worth grabbing a guide and just seeing where I'm at. If I put this right about 100 pixels, it appears that that's about my margin. So I'm gonna try to get the same one over here. So we'll drag it over to 2100, hold down Shift, and then drag it back to 2000. Having consistent margins is something that makes your work look more professional. So I'm just going to nudge my name over just slightly, and then grab the next day and move that over. and then we can move on to the subheader. So over here, I will click once just to get some dummy text out there. I'm going to type the word photographer. And go back to the move tool. And once again, I'm going to use the arrows. I'll use the down arrow to put it right there on the line. And then I'll use shift right arrow to slide it over. Of course, you could do this with the move tool, but it's just so much easier for me to do it with the arrow keys. And it does help if you spell things correctly. So I'll fix that. Let's get that other O in there. There we go. So again, now I have to go back to the move tool, shift, right arrow, and then let go of shift and just use the arrow keys themselves. Now I'm going to double click on the T next to the word photographer in my layers tab to select it. And if I go up to where it says Helvetica, I'm going to change it from bold to thin. Now we're going to repeat that process, and we are going to go over to where it says photographer, click on it, and hit Command J to duplicate, make a copy of it. Then I'm going to make sure my move tool is selected, and I'm going to use shift, right arrow, just to slide that text over. And then I will change the content. So might as well change the content before I position it. So I'll go over to where it says photographer copy, and I'm going to change photographer to photography and add the word real estate in front of it. All right. Now that is a lot of text right there. Not exactly the look I was going for. Notice that by the time I nudge that over, it's pretty much halfway in the image. But this was the last step. So if I really want to see this, like right now it's a little tough to kind of really gauge what I'm doing because the guides are a little bit distracting. So what you can do is you can go up to View, and where it says Rulers, or where it says Guides, you can choose Clear Guides. That's going to basically remove them. You can choose Lock Guides if you're using this as a template to create lots of additional, maybe you're making business cards for a living and you want to use this template over and over, you could lock these guides. But you can also go to where it says Extras and where it says Show. If I turn off Extras, notice it all disappears. Now, did I lose them entirely? No. If I turn Extras back on, all my guides are back on. And you can also hit Command H to hide them. But there you go. So if I hit Command H, they are on. Command H, they're off. And that's going to be Control H on a PC. So how do I feel about this? Well, it's a little wonky. It's not exactly the layout that I would prefer. So I think I'm just going to have to basically shrink this second line of text. And then I also have to kind of look at what it's overlapping and its readability. Notice that if I could get this up just a little bit into the sky, it would make for a much cleaner background. You want to be very conscious about what you're putting text over. For example, if I really just couldn't find a spot where this was readable, I could always put a solid color behind it. I could do something like come up and grab a rectangle and maybe just put like a gray rectangle or any color just to help make that a little bit more readable. Now, obviously a white rectangle is not going to work because it's white text, but what if I did something like yellow? If I selected that rectangle layer, I could drop the opacity, and maybe that helps. Still feel like it looks a little weird, but I'm just throwing some options out there. I don't think I'm going to go with the rectangle option. I think instead what I'm going to do is go down to my photo and try to just drop it down a little bit in the image. So as long as I have my move tool selected and I select the photo layer, I can use Shift down arrow, and you can see that by having my text closer to the sky, it's a whole heck of a lot more readable. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move all the text up, but I want to do it at the same time. So what I'm going to do is select real estate photography over here on the right, and I'm going to hold down the command key. That'd be control on a PC. I'm going to choose photographer. You can see how it's letting me select multiple layers. Now I'm going to use the arrow key and start to move it up a little bit. And I'm finding that I like this much better from a readability standpoint. I still don't like that tree underneath the word photography, so I might dip it down just a bit more. But before I do that, I think I might just try shrinking these a little bit. So let's go ahead and deselect. Now I'm going to select real estate photography, hold down command, and I'm going to select photographer. And I'm going to switch them from being 18 point to 14 point. And then obviously we'll have to select them individually and reposition them. Do I want to turn my guides back on? I think I'll probably just nudge them up to the bottom of my name. So, real estate photography, hold shift, go up a little bit, and then to the right, get that kind of lined up, and then grab the word photographer and go up and take it over to the left. Okay, that's looking a whole lot better in my opinion. Might still be worth just pulling out a guide to make sure those two bits of text are even, and it looks like they are. Again, I'll hit Command H to hide those guides. And at this point, I'm feeling very good about the front of it. Do we want to try to just drop it a touch more? Maybe. Go down to the photo, make sure the Move tool is selected, and use the arrow keys. And now we are going to create the back of the card. And here's the coolest part about the back of the card. Creating the back of the card won't require really creating anything new. What we're going to do is copy and paste. The back of the card has a design that looks like this. Okay, and what I'd like to do is put in some little icons right there as well. So you can see that we basically have a similar layout. The only difference is we're still dividing the page by thirds. We're still using the same colors. So the reality is we actually have everything we need right here to create this. Okay, so I'll show you how we do that. I'm going to go ahead and choose, make sure I click on Photoshop. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to New. And you'll see that right here, it says Custom 7x4, 300 pixels per inch. So this is essentially what we created when we were creating the front of the card. So I'll choose Create. And if I hit Command H, you'll notice that my my guides aren't coming back. So what I'll do is I'll just take a second and drag out some new guides. Again, hold down Shift, click in the rulers, and I'm going to put my first guide. What do I have here? 1200, so I'm going to put one at 400. I'm going to put one at 800. Whoops. All right, so this is actually good. You see what just happened there? I tried to click in my guides, but I actually clicked right above it. And what I did was I pulled off the window. And Adobe is designed to do this, but it can also be really annoying when you're not trying to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Window, Arrange, Consolidate All to Tabs. And you can see that that basically puts my tabs back up in the top. Okay, one more time. I'm going to grab this guide. I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to drag it down. I'll put this one at 800. Now, I don't need to divide into thirds this way, but I do need to get this side third. So 2100 is our total number. So I'm going to click and drag out to 1400. So now this is 1/3 over here, although it looks like we didn't do everything right here because it was not at 800. I think I had it at 900. There we go. Okay, so notice we have thirds. Okay, so like I said, this is the cool part. I'm going to go up to the images here, and I'm going to grab the selection tool, and I'm going to click on my colored layers. So I'm going to come over to my layers tab, click and hold down Command and then click again and select all three of those. Now I'm going to hit Command C to copy. And we'll come over to the new document, click on it, and hit Command V to paste. And just like that, there's all our rectangles. Now, they're not in the right position, but that's okay, because I can grab the selection tool. I need to deselect because all three of them are currently selected. I'll grab rectangle 1, and I will drag it down to here. I will grab, let's see, yellow goes on top, so I'll click on the top rectangle. And again, I'm always selecting the layer first over here, and then dragging it into position. Now let's go back, and let's select the blue layer. All right, and again, Command C, that's Control C on a PC. Command C to copy. Come back over to our other document, click, and Command V to paste. Now here's a situation where it doesn't fit. In fact, it's kind of weird. What's going on there? Is our background covering that up? It's really strange because it is on top of the background. I'm going to go ahead and turn the background off. Okay, that's bizarre because the background is beneath this layer. Weird. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the background layer because somehow that's affecting it, which it shouldn't be. And I'll put this on top, and now you can see it's on top of everything. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it up to the corner, and what I need to do is reshape it a little bit. Now remember, this is a vector image, meaning that it is, I can stretch it, shrink it, it will never lose quality. And again, it's because it's just a solid color. It wasn't shot with a camera. So if I want to reshape this, I need to hit Command T, that is Control T on a PC, and then I can just, now notice it's constraining as it shrinks. If you don't want it to do that, which I don't, you need to hold down Shift. So if I hold down Shift and now drag over, you can see that it's only shrinking in the direction that I drag it. And I'm still holding down Shift, and now I'm going to drag it down. And there we go. So notice I missed a little bit up at the top there. You can see a little bit of what we call onion skin poking through. So I'm just going to make sure I have the Move tool selected and use the arrow keys to nudge that up. And it's always a good idea to zoom in, make sure, oh, see? If I hadn't zoomed in, I never would have noticed that mistake. Okay, I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't do that for the sake of example. I did that because I didn't zoom in. So we'll click on it, we'll use the arrow key and nudge it over, and that looks pretty good. I can also see that my middle orange is overlapping a little, so I'll select that one, use the arrow key to nudge it up a little bit, not too far. And now I'm going to use the space bar to give me the hand tool so I can go up and check up here. And I don't see any onion skin around the edges, but I do see that the yellow is overlapping just a bit. So I'll select it and just nudge it up with the arrow key. All right. Now, at this point, we also want to add in our circles. So let's go back to the other document. Let's come down to ellipse copy 1, 2, 3. We'll select copy 1, hold down Command. Now I'm going to click on the other two, and then I'm going to hit Command C to copy. We'll go back to our other document, click, and hit Command V to paste. Now, as you can see over here, two of them are underneath our blue layer. Not a big deal. I could just grab the blue layer and drag it underneath the rectangles, and now they all pop up. I'll select the yellow one. Now, we will need to add in some additional guides to make sure these are in the right spot, so let's go ahead and do that. So I've got 0 to 400 here, so this one needs to go at 200. Hold down Shift, put it at 200. Grab this next one, put this at 600. And the last one will go at 1,000. Why am I doing that? Well, I am doing that so that I can put these circles right in the middle of those guides. And we'll just select each one of these and drag them into place. And there we go. Now, at this point, I don't want to have the same information here. I don't want to have phone and all that here. What I want to do is maybe list 3 things that I offer as a real estate photographer. Things like photography, video tours, drone work, things like that. Okay, so at this point, what I need to do is just add in those additional things. So I'm going to grab the text tool, and I'm going to come over here and click out some dummy text, and grab the move tool. Now you can see as soon as I clicked on the move tool, the text disappeared. So because it's on the bottom, I'm going to drag it all the way to the top of my layers. And again, double click on the T, and I'm going to type in photography. And then rather than dealing with the text tool, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. So I'm going to select this layer. I'm going to hit Command J, and then I'll use the arrow keys. Again, make sure the move tool is selected, just to nudge this down. And then I'll double click on the T and change this one to say aerial/drone or aerial photos. How about that? And again, I'm going to select it, hit Command J to duplicate it, use Shift down arrow to nudge it down. And this last one, I'll double click on the T and change this to video tours. Okay. And now I'm going to select all of them. Notice how they're all pretty much in the same spot. So I'm going to select all 3 by just holding down Command. And then I'm going to use the arrow to slide them all over. And then I'll kind of go one at a time and sort of get each one of them. I think I'm just going to have them kind of right in the middle of that line. So, and I'll drag out a guide, maybe just a little margin guide right there. Ideally, I think I'd like to have them centered. So I'll do that. Okay, so photography, select it, and just nudge it down a little bit. Aerial photos, that actually looks pretty good just the way it is. Video tours looks pretty good too. So now I just need to get the name of the company over here. And again, I could use the text tool, or I could just grab one of these, hit Command J, and do it this way. Although this is a situation where I actually would just use grab the selection tool, select the text. Now you can see the guides are getting in the way here. I can't select the text without, oh, there it is. So we'll put it up there. So we'll just select that text, double click on the T, and we'll make it a lot bigger. But before we do that, I'm going to change it to say next day, and then I'm going to hit return, change it to real estate photography. All right, and now that I have those there, I'm going to take a minute and format them. So I'll select the next day. I'm going to make that really big, like way bigger than the text below it. Because you got to remember, this is a business card. You might as well at least have it big somewhere. And maybe 48's a little better. And that looks pretty good. I might just make this big enough to fit underneath. Change it from 12 to 18 point. Maybe 16 point. That looks pretty good. Okay. And now I'm going to select both of these. So I can hold Command and I could select both of the layers if I want. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This is all on one layer. So I only need to select that one layer. Use the Shift arrow key to nudge it down into the middle. I'll put the name right on that guide right there, and I am going to go back and reselect the bottom and make it a thinner font. So this one I have to do manually. Since these are both on the same text layer, If I selected it, it would select everything. So I'm going to manually grab the text tool, drag it across just the bottom, and go over to the character window and set it to thin. There we go. Maybe that's a little too thin. I don't know why. It just looks a little bit thinner than I wanted it. So, not a big deal. Probably hit Command Z. And let's select it one more time and try something just a bit thicker than thin. I accidentally clicked off there and it deselected it, so select it one more time. Change it from bold to regular. There we go. I like that right there. I actually have a little icon for this company, so we might as well add that in. And the icon is this image right here of an aperture blade. Now, I was hoping it didn't have the black part behind it, but that's not that big of a deal. So if I drag this over to like right here and maybe drag it all the way to the bottom, put a color blend mode on it, you can see that it's already kind of changed it. But I really don't want that black outline on this photo. So how could we deal with that? I'm going to drag it to the top just so you can see here. So I have this photo, and what I want to do is I want to make a selection of just the circular part. And I want to do that and copy it to a new layer, but it'll only copy what's inside the selection. So the tool I want to use is going to be the elliptical marquee tool. So check this out. I'm going to put the mouse right in the middle. I'm going to begin to drag this out, and then I'm going to hold down Option and Command. And you can see that it's dragging out this marquee. Now, did I get it right in the center? Pretty close. I'm off a little bit. I'm going to go just a bit outside, and then will it let me use the arrow keys to nudge? It sure will. So I'm going to nudge just a little bit until I feel like I have a somewhat even border going all the way around. Okay, so we have this photo of the aperture blade, and I've added this marquee to it, and the reason I'm doing this is because I want to select out the center without getting the edges. So right now, if I hit Command J, it should only copy what is inside the center of this marquee. Let's give it a shot. All right, there we go. Now, if you look over on the layers, you can see that it worked. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to my layers panel, and I'm going to drag the original image down to the trash. And I'm going to take this image and I'm going to drag it beneath the text and beneath the color, so it's right there. I don't like how it's bumping into that circle right there, so I'm going to nudge it to the left just a little bit. And I may need to nudge my text as well. We'll see. Yep, I think I do. So we'll grab the text and we'll nudge that over a little bit too, so it's nice and centered. And I think I might drop the opacity as well, because that is really a little punchier than I wanted it to be. So I'll go to where the aperture layer is, and I'll drop the opacity. Start at like 50%. There you go. That looks good. Even a little lower. Cool. Again, any photographer out there knows what that is. It doesn't need to be jumping off the page. And so at that point, we have a front and a back. And the only thing I'm missing are some little icons right in there. And so let's take a quick look and see if there is anything in the custom shapes that would work. So if we go up to the shape tool, the rectangle tool, and we go down to custom shapes, that's going to allow us to see custom shapes. And then we'll go to window and we'll go down to shapes. And that's going to bring in all my custom shapes. We'll click off to deselect. Just click on a different layer. That looks good. And then we'll do one last custom shape. And for this one, I'm going to use this little world icon. Go down to the custom shapes tool. And I'll come down here and line that up right in the center. Hold, click, drag, and then hold down Option and Shift. And there we go. Click off, or click on a different layer. And there we go. So we have our icons, we have our titles, we have our logo, and everything looks pretty good. And I think at this point we can say we are done. And so what we want to do now is, let's title these. So I'm going to go to the front one, and I'm going to go up to File and choose Save As. And to be quite honest, this is something I like to do at the beginning of a project, not at the end. So I'm going to type in B card front and then underscore my last name. And I am going to save that to my desktop and hit save. Click OK, and then I'm going to go to the back and do the same thing. File, Save As. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm actually saving the PSD, the Photoshop document. This is not what I would turn in or give to a client. This is just me saving the Photoshop part of it. So B card back underscore Taylor and save. Now I have the PSDs saved. If I ever need to come in here and make changes, I would go to those to make those changes. But I need to have something that I can give to the client. And so for that, I'll go File, Export. Now, export is what you do when you want to convert a Photoshop document into a JPEG or a PNG. These are the types of images that you would normally share with other people or clients. So I'm going to go to Export As. And one of the things that we did when we started this was we did everything larger than it needed to be. We can always go into the document settings under Image size, and we could shrink this down. We could set this to inches and shrink it down to 3.5 by 2 if we wanted to. For now, we'll just leave it at this size. So we'll go to Export, Export As, and I'm just going to bump the quality up to 6. I'm going to leave all the sizes as they are and choose Export. And then I'll do the same for the front. Go over to the front of the card and same thing, File, Export, Export As, and we'll make sure it's set to JPEG and bump that up to best quality and choose Export. There we go. So if you've watched this tutorial just to learn the process, I hope this has helped. If you are a student in my class, this is what you'll be turning in, both of these JPEGs, not the PSDs, just the JPEGs. Cool. I hope you enjoyed a little dive into Photoshop, and stick around because there's more of these on the way.